Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Editor's note, pardon for the cuts and the shortness and stuff like that. Me and the brothers, we had some technical difficulties as we went about, recording this episode. So please bear with us, pray for us. We appreciate the views, the likes, the comments, the shares. Yes, and without further ado. It's like I don't know, how do you push back against like this level of just like pure just excess, dude? Just like straightens it off.
I mean, we have to fill this some spaces. I don't want to say as much as possible. Don't just go there and just blast out ignorance and end up doing more harm than good. At the end of the day, I think there's gonna be a lot of people that just gonna stay away from it and avoid it. Just like we have people that just are like, hey, the social media thing is just not for me. Even though some things may be entertaining and just good.
No, but that's stepping away from the problem. That's a person stepping away from the problem, which is fine. But the problem still persists.
Yeah, but if that's not the problem, it's another problem.
But the problem still persists. I'm trying to highlight this problem. Pure insidaf, just pure excess. You step away from it. There's 3 of us in this call that are still going to try to pick at it. It needs picking at.
I think it's I don't want to phrase it as a numbers game, but like majority wins. So if there's 300 million people in America, for example, and 200 million are going to be infested with 70% of the nation, how do you at that point you're in it. You just need to know how to navigate it. And I mean, you're at that point, you can't even like get away from the toxicity and the poison and the lies and whatever else,
So what do you do about it?
So what do you do about it? Yeah, that's
technologies of the self, bro. Technologies of the self. In Foucauldian language, it's technologies of the self. In our tradition, it's tazkiyah. It's tazkiyah, employing methodologies. Because when you study, if you look at postmodern philosophy and all this other fancy stuff that you hear in academia, right? There's structuralism, right? And then when you start talking about autonomy and freedom and concepts of that, there's a lot of work that's been done recently from Islamic perspectives of freedom. But without overcomplicating, it's simply, if you acknowledge that power structures in the state are ultimately encroaching on all spheres of privacy and freedom, what real freedom do you have left? Right, when it reaches the totalitarian state.
Totalitarian,
thank you. Totalitarian state. The only freedom you have is here, or the soul, right? We would say the soul, right? And in turn, inside of that, and that's even being encroached when you start looking at nanotechnology, AI, nanobots, and all that stuff.
You need to share that with your students, bro. And you know what I'm talking about.
No, but
they need to hear that.
But these methodologies of self-purification, awrad, dhikr, tafakkur, like reflection, all of the above, right? We have lots and lots of literature in English. You don't even need to be fluent in Arabic, nothing like that. You don't need to be part of a tariqah. You don't need any of that. Like, it's in the sunnah, there's in the books of a hadith, there's been compilations of a hadith that have been compiled from the sahihain, and the sitta, that and they're meant for the awam, right? It's not just meant for the fuqaha or the muhaddithin, right? These are compilations that have been specifically brought together. If you don't want to read like works of akhlaq, right? Because some people say, oh, it's not just Quran and Sunnah. So for those that are very textual, there's still Quran and Sunnah, right? They still have, and they have works in that. There's just Quran and Sunnah that do it. And for those that like to venture and look at other, whatever wisdom that other religious traditions may have, whether it be Greek, Roman, Far East, then there's literature in that as well. And the Muslims took from that, and it's in their literature. It's in the books. When you read the genre, The Mirrors for Princes, for example, right? Political science advice for like rulers, right? You'll see lots of it comes from Persian wisdom and Greek wisdom and Roman wisdom, and some of them even from the Indian tradition, like this, the subcontinent as well. Right.
So Haroon and Company?
No, yeah, but it's like the reason why I mention all that is like when you say like what can you do, right? Hate it with your heart, but how do you hate it with your heart? Is it just hate? Is it just something that we have a disgruntled feeling about, or is there an implementation or a methodology that can be employed internally as well as their actions, right? Even if you are stepping away from it, that's something, right? That's something. Even though too, because ultimately, when you look at the debate between whether Islam is an individualist religion or a communal religion, it's mostly predominantly individual because ultimately your concern is for your dependence, but yourself as well. First and foremost, yourself, and then your dependence on what? Salvation, right? Iman, right? And all of that, right? And then communally after that, right? So you do your best, but anyway, I kind of digression, but hopefully made some points that kind of,
No, you definitely did. You definitely did. I took a lot from that, to be honest with you.
alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I want to hear more from Omar, to be honest.
What am I to say? Abu Hamza knows more than me in this regard.
And
No, no,
Abu
no, no.
Hamza spoke his piece.
I don't know. Part of it's like, what do you do? There's like this, like in my experiences, everything, this answer comes out very piecemeal. But like what he mentioned, with him being to my left, Abu Hamza had mentioned, it's like, how then do you connect the dots? Is constructing now a methodology and approach, a type of framework
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, AI slop, bad this, bad that. Here's a full top to bottom, left to right way to think about what the problem is through a purely Islamic perspective. That's the next step. We got the
What if
books, we got the articles. What he's Hamza started off with the problem and saying that we don't quite have that in the West, if not anymore. Okay. But as he said, there are pieces, there are works out there that are happening that deal with this stuff. Cool. For me, it's piecemeal. It's things I've learned, the things I've been exposed to. All right, alhamdulillah. But I'm only 38. I've been around the block once. I'm on my second round.
I think as long as we enter those spaces, we don't need to I don't want people to think like, oh, when the Muslims enter certain spaces, they Islamify or things like that. It's not what's it about. The whole point is just to abstain, at least just refrain from like haram, I'll just the best that I can to my ability, you know what I'm saying? So like if we have a space in that and we have our own maybe platforms or things like that, where Muslims can navigate and things can be like monetized. That way, it's not like I'm just here to have an Islamic space so I can give you 24 hours a day of halaqah. No, it's just at least, hey, the space that you have and the things that you see here, at least it's not going to trigger certain thoughts like the existence of God or I live in the West, so maybe I have the freedom to deal with interest or things like that. Just, hey, this space exists just so you don't dive into so much haram that you become, numb to it, and you find yourself, slipping into it much easier than once upon a time before. You get what I'm saying? That would be a
I do.
start, at least, But then we would also
That
need to have maybe engineers or somebody who can create, some sub culture, I guess I'll call it, but something like
yeah,
that.
what's that German philosopher that proposed the third space idea?
Hmm.
Haroon, do you remember?
Is it Gadamer,
There,
whatever his name is,
I
Gadamer.
don't know.
Habermas or something? Habermas or something?
Habermas, that sounds right too. One of the, I think, yes, one of those
No,
two. I think.
that sounded like you said Hagen-Dazs. That's ice cream. That's German ice cream.
It's one of these.
That's
Oh,
another approach.
was he the one who did the public sphere or something?
I think so, yeah.
Well, Kant also talks about it in his essay on enlightenment. Like talking about like private, public. Kant, Immanuel Kant,
Emmanuel.
Immanuel Kant. Yeah, I think he talks about it, but not in the same way. Not in the same way.
So Nadia, the thing that you're proposing is another way of approaching to do it. They call it a third space, lack of a better term. It's not quite work. It's not quite home. It's not quite place of worship. It's meant to be something very social.
That was MySpace. Remember?
Yeah, shout out to
Yeah.
Tom. He was
Yo,
smart.
you guys,
20 million
That
and
was-
left.
That's what he was
You
trying
guys-
to do.
do you guys know what's his name? Sheikh Abdul Shakur Brooks.
I've heard
He's
the
from
name, but
Toronto.
I'm not.
Yeah, he's from Toronto originally. He's a Maliki scholar, mashallah. He's from Toronto. I don't know much of him. I know his brother fairly well. But he's had started. He's a developer. He knows how to code. He's also traditional. He's a sheikh, like legitimate sheikh, like studied for many years in South Africa, Egypt, and other places. But he had started this. He started this kind of like Muslims version of like Facebook or MySpace, and it started off hot like for the first bit, and then it just fell off.
What was that called?
Ulu, like if you Google it, you might be able to find it. So it was good. Like I did the like the beta version. Um,
Mhm.
he changed it now. I don't know if it's still his, but it was spelled like something. Yeah, this is even his logo. So he still has a website up, but now he kind of created it more for like a commercial. So if you go to this website here, I'll put it in the chat. It's the same logo, but he
I'll
does
put
a
it in the
different thing with
footnotes.
it now. Yeah, I'll put it
Was it
just so you
MedLife?
have it. This one there, it's in the chat, like the
Ulu?
group chat. Ulu, yeah. So he uses it now for, I don't know what he uses it for now. It looks like it's for more commercial enterprise type of thing. But he had originally developed this thing and even created a mobile version, so it wasn't just like desktop. He had mobile apps as well. He had an iOS, he had Android. It did well for a bit, and then budgeting was an issue because you got to run this thing, right? He
Yeah,
let
it
it
needs
free.
server space.
Yeah, but and even activity, like everybody was on it. It was hot for a bit, and then activity. Muslims, just because this is the awkwardness. I had a meeting, from the Zaytuna alumni telegram stuff we were doing. Like one of the part of the nonprofit thing because I work with Taiba, but when they were talking about like some of the other people who were in that like alumni meeting, they were mentioning like their chaplains or not chaplains, they're like imams or community leaders or youth leaders, whatever, and they're having this hard time trying to get youth involved, right? And then I was just mentioning to him that sometimes that third space is awkward because it's not in, especially when you're dealing with youth and stuff. But I know it's not directly relevant to what is exactly being said. But the reason why I mentioned this third space, because whether it's third space in regards to like online, because everybody spends their time online. They're on the phone, they're gonna go on the internet. They're on the computer, they're gonna go on the internet. Right? So this Ulu thing was a third space. It didn't work out. When Muslim communities that I've seen, and from what I've seen from some of the alumni at Zaytuna when I've talked to them, not everywhere, there's some very successful third spaces. We have some in Toronto as well. But in general, they're very hard to maintain or it catches on and then it just fizzles out. Maintaining a third space is very demanding, whether it be the people who are running it or trying to keep it interesting. Because people's attention spans are so short now, that it gets monotonous quickly. It doesn't capture the interest. And so when you come in with if I come in with like my books here, my 5,000 stacks of books here, and hey, we're gonna study this, and this, how many people are gonna show? 5? And then after the second week, why? Because it's gonna be like it doesn't capture their interest usually. You have to present it in a way that's gonna keep it, and then you got to keep it changing and make it dynamic because if it's rigid or structured in a way that's just repetitive over and over again, that doesn't appeal to most personality types nowadays.
Yo, we're doing a podcast episode on my vision when it's finished.
That.
Yeah. But yeah, that just cut it to touch on like the third space aspect, like, from what I've seen. But it's an option. But I still think the jury's out whether it's successful or not.
Yeah. I think the one thing when it comes to academia or book related that can grab anyone's attention and it's like mesmerizing, keeps you coming back, history. Like when I was little, like I just wanted to hear this. My mom, before I go to sleep, I just used to ask my mom, can you tell me the story of Yusuf one more time? Story of Yunus, you know what I mean? Things like that. And when we get to those parts and Like in the khutbah, that's when we just all turn our head towards the sheikh and we're locked in. I think needs to be, cultural related too, because that's the thing about Islam. It's the four corners, but at the same time, other things that are cool too, because we have Muslim basketball leagues like AAU for Muslims. Throw the clips on the gram, like throw that on there, Like I'm big on sports. Like as much as I love the deen, I'm big on sports and racing, things like that. We have like the guy who won, I think 2025, like MotoGP. I was looking at his name. He might be Indonesian or something like that. Like we need to celebrate like these people, kind of like give the flowers or things like that. At the same time, we can always tie it back to our deen and things like that, because provision is from Allah. You know what I mean? Like there was a practice. This is a real life practice that was done in Muslim countries where the person, if they own like a shop, in front of every shop was like a chair, was a seat, an empty seat. So in the morning, if a person would come and sit in the chair and they're waiting for that shop to open, the owner would open up shop, open up the gate, and bring the person who's sitting in the chair inside. And what does that tell the shoppers? That tells the shoppers that this person already has a shopper in their store, so they're getting some type of money that's happening that day. So they'll go to the other shop that has a chair outside where it's like, oh, there's no one buying in this place. Let me go support. Let me go spend my money there because the other place has it. And this is something that the merchants were doing, to be fair, and things like that. And this is pure character. I actually just learned about this past over the week, like Friday, basically over the weekend or Friday. I think
A couple days ago for people who listen to this.
days ago, you know what I mean? So I think things like that, maybe not necessarily that is history, you know what I mean? But I think it's more like, root and things like that. Muslims, we fit a lot of places, a lot of times people revert to the golden era, from the 9th to 15th century is kind of like, where a lot of people say, oh, did you know this? Did you know that? Did you know that? As beautiful as that is, I think we need to focus on the present, which almost goes against to what I said on the first podcast that I was on, where I was sort of being devil's advocate in the conversation with Haroon. I'm pretty sure Abu Hamza, you popped in too in that episode where I was like, we don't have anybody anymore. There's no one to really like celebrate. But to be fair, we're in the space of people getting silenced and shadow banned.
Not everything sucks, bro.
Yeah, not everything sucks. You know what I mean? So I think
that's partially the narrative. You see it a lot, and even some popular teachers, unfortunately, have kind of fell into this trap in one way or another of the decline thesis.
Yeah.
Islam had this golden age, and then it fell off intellectually. It fell off militarily, and to some extent, yes, right, militarily especially, with the fall of the Ottomans, stuff like that, and that's fine. But that's not the only means of success, right? The intellectual decline thesis has been debunked in the last 10 years, even longer, but especially in the last 10 years in academia. There's been so much research that's been done on all levels to show that that's not true at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Muslims need to go back to, because every field, like I love the classical period, but my favorite time periods actually is modern Islamic history, contemporary Muslim thought. 1800s is the best time period in world history, in my opinion. It's the most interesting. I'm not saying it's the best to live in, but it was definitely the most thought-provoking time period because of all the changes that the world is facing and the responses that all of the world are facing, whether it's the Far East, the U.S., the European countries, Muslim thinkers. How do you reconcile tradition and technology and stuff? Anyway, I'm kind of blabbing.
You off.
Yeah.
Yo, what's that book we did with Dr. Sinanovich?
I did feel like I got a lot from his class, but it was just such a sweeping overview. We just went through, okay, he said this, they said this, and then you have Osama. And you kind of just like political Islam.
So like,
It's like
was
the
it like
same-
an overview? Was it like an
What?
anthology of just like, was it an anthology of prominent thinkers, and then and then it
No,
just stops after like the 1800s up until like Usama, like you said? Like, there's seriously that big of a gap? Or does
I'm
it talk about some of
definitely
like the Muslim Brotherhood and all the other stuff that they kind of developed in the 1900s?
yeah, no, I'm definitely oversimplifying
Okay.
this.
Okay, I was say, man, that's crazy, bro. Academic book doing that. That's great.
No, but there is that one book from Banna to Bin Laden.
Oh yeah,
That
you
book.
guys did. We didn't do that.
So, so
So
basically,
stupid.
they're
Yeah.
we did go over massive thinkers in that class, like Muhammad Iqbal. Who else did we go through? Yeah, it's that book, right?
What's
Yeah.
it?
So yeah, thought-provoking pieces in there, and also some of the who are some of these guys? Some
Let me go
forget
see
it.
if I have it here. So the rise of Islamic reformist thought and its challenge to traditional Islam, the diversity of Islamic thought towards the typology, Sufi thought and reconstruction. Yeah, there's just like a bunch of like these
What are some of
gender
the
and
names, if you don't
family,
mind me asking?
huh?
Like, who are some of the names that the book had? Like in the table of contents, if you could just throw like 5 or 6 names.
Like only in table of contents just as authors. I
Yeah,
can,
authors. Just throw just the authors of the articles, no, but not the scholars that discuss.
yeah, no, it's just authors of Bashir M. Nafi, William Shepard, Elizabeth Sirriya, Ralph Corey, Abdul Wahab Al Effendi. Wow.
Al Effendi.
Yes. Hugh Goddard, Suha Taji Faruqi. I would imagine they're related to like the Ismail Faruqi. Allah yarhamu. You know who I'm talking about, right?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, great Egyptian guy. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't blame. I see where you're coming from though, man. With that, with your 2 cents on like the 18th, 19th century.
Wow.
Oh, the likes of Khalid Abu Fadl and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm partial, like the
And
guy who I
that's
did my thesis on, you know, but that's just because of my thesis. Um, Jamaluddin al-Qasimi. He's a very
Oh, yeah.
prominent Syrian scholar in the 1800s, died away
So
in
you just say
1914.
Afghani.
No, but he was colleagues with Rashid Rida and Muhammad Abdul. But he's an interesting scholar, like in the sense he approaches things a bit differently than those two. But he's still a reformer, but not nearly as a problematic way, or what could be perceived as a problematic way as the other two. Less controversial in that regard, but brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, I digress.
I hear you. You know what I've been sleeping on, yo? Imam Ahmed Shawqi.
I haven't read any of his works.
He's of like the Egyptian aristocracy, also being Turkish, of like Turkish descent, and lives the party life. He loves his life. He got the money and all that good stuff. But then he gets exiled from Egypt by the British, and he goes to Andalusia, and that trip changes his life. Comes back to Egypt, enrolls in Azhar, and the rest is history. So he ends up like highlighting the power of classical Arabic, even like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, to say that, yeah, Arabic is still amazing. Classical Arabic is still this fantastic thing, and arguably ends up becoming one of like one of the greatest Arab poets in the whole history of Arabic poetry. So he goes into like this whole thing. It's dope. I'm just like, I've also heard it, the Fez singers from Fez, Morocco, like they have a version of the Burda that they do, and there's a line. He goes, Waqala Shawqi, the verse. I was like,